Hi, my name's Counsel, and welcome to the Mastering Money series of videos. Now, there's actually 9 in this series, so make sure that you see them all because collectively they really form the foundations of my journey towards making my first $1 million. Now, today I thought we'd have a look at what actually drives money results. Now, if you think about it, money in some way, shape or form has been around for at least the past 5,000 years. And it dates all the way back to the ancient times of Mesopotamia. But what really interests me about that 5,000-year history is that we've had literally hundreds of generations of people since, so approximately 300 generations. And in some way, shape or form, each of those generations has thought about how do they get surplus money for their version of the good life. And yet today, despite all of that history, the mysteries around having surplus money still really occupies the minds of current generations. And it seems that only a minority ever really get to authentically enjoy their version of the good life. And it seems that the majority really maintain their positions on some form of work stress, not enough time, not enough money treadmill. And when you think about the information that's available, we have literally an abundance of information. There's so many books, there's so many videos, there's so many CDs, there's so many downloadables, there's so many computer programs. Literally, we've got information on how to increase your profitability, information on get rich quick and wealth for life. And despite this 5,000-year history, and despite all of the information that's available, the mysteries of money still remain an enigma for most people. And that certainly was my case for the first 40 years of my life. I guess like everybody else, I was taught to really go out there and get a job and work really hard. And, I chose the life of a potter and I was an exhibiting artist and I would exhibit my work nationally and internationally. And yet I was never able to get ahead. And I always wondered why. Why was I always dead flat broke? In fact, I was worse than dead flat broke because I was always in some form of debt. And I was just pondering this one day. And I was walking through an art gallery. And in the art gallery, there were these pictures. And it was really about the early construction of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And I was moving through these series of photos, and I came across another photo based on the early construction of the Eiffel Tower, and it suddenly dawned on me. It's kind of like this great sort of bolt of lightning hit me that it was all about the foundations, because the Sydney Harbour Bridge could only have ever been built if the foundations were solid. The Eiffel Tower could only ever have been built if the foundations of which they were built on were as absolutely rock solid. And so I started thinking and studying about the foundations in the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Just the pylons, they go down 12 meters and they're set in very, very solid sandstone. And then they've got anchoring tunnels at each end that go back into the deep bedrock. They go back 36 meters. And so it really was the foundations. And when you think about the Eiffel Tower and each of its 4 feet, the foundations were dug to a depth of 53 feet. And then something like 20 feet of concrete was poured in. And then it was huge blocks of limestone and 2 layers of hardstone. But then they had people literally crawl down into the middle of those foundations and set in place anchoring bolts that were 26 feet long and 4 inches in diameter. And it really dawned on me that it was my foundations around money were based on this notion of 3 mindsets. It was go out there and earn money, go out there and spend money, and then go out there and borrow money for non-productive purposes. And it was a bit like, these people in the video here. I just couldn't make my financial future move forward. I just couldn't actually get to a surplus. So I started to think it was the foundations in my mind that I had to rebuild. And for doing that, I had to really stop being distracted by things that were really unimportant, and I had to become a better administrator of my time, and I had to deepen my understandings of the ways that not only my mindset was actually working, but the way that money itself worked, the way that value was exchanged. And so by developing new foundations based on mastery, and this sense of value, it literally enabled me to, move from a position of dead flat broke to making my first millionaire within 3.8 years. And so think about where you are in terms of the financial results that you want, or the financial success that you want. And it really does require a combination of two things. It requires literally building new foundations in a mindset, so that mindset can start opening itself to the possibilities and the opportunities of generating surplus money for lifestyle. And then we've got to start directing that mindset at real life strategies, or what I call the mechanics of wealth, that lead directly to increasing your profitability. And again, it's a little bit like building a bridge here. On one side of the bridge, you've got your current money results, and you've got your current mindset around those money results. On the other side of the bridge, you've got sort of the future results based on money, but it's also requiring a future mindset to get those results. And so I thought I'd share some of the mindset things that I had to go through. And what I'm going to do is build a picture here, and it's a little bit detailed, but you'll actually get the sentiments that I'm trying to share. The thing that I had to start thinking about first was the subconscious models that I had been conditioned with. Now, those subconscious models could be based on old blueprints from the community around you, from your parents, from the environment, or in fact you could insert a whole new series of blueprints. And that's exactly what I did. I started to insert a whole new series of blueprints into my subconscious mind. And then I started to understand that we actually have multiple selves. We're not just one personality. In any given context, there's basically a different mental personality comes forward to deal with that context. Now, some of those cells, and especially if you look at a subject called the psychology of the cells, you'll find that some of those cells are really quite progressive, and they're the ones that enable you to move forward, but some of those cells are actually quite disowned, and they're the ones that hold you back, and they're the ones that tend to sabotage you. So I started thinking about the psychology of the cells, and then I started thinking about the actual mindset, or what the cognitive drivers. How do I think about how I think about things? And I understood that those cognitive drivers could be based on what's been termed resistant states. And resistant states are those things that are always kind of sort of got this little internal voice that it's uncomfortable, so you better step back into safety. Or in fact, they could be based on flow states, and those flow states are, yep, look, this is a really good thing to go after, and I'm going to skill myself. And so you've got to start thinking about what cognitive drivers that you're tapping into, and then how do those cognitive drivers affect your motivation. Because my motivation had to change from disappointment, which was the first 40 years of my life, into I had to direct pleasure at this ability to gain mastery. And then I had to start thinking about my habits. And I needed to get out of the ruts of sameness and start exploring new habits that were based on learning, that were based on exploring new territory, that were based on exploring new thinking models, that were based on exploring new understandings about money. And then I had to start making new neural pathways inside my mind. Because, for the first 40 years, I was just reinforcing the old, the familiar pathways, but they weren't allowing me to get the money results that I started to want. So I had to establish new neuro pathways, and you do that by repetition, repetition, repetition. And it's those new neuro pathways that led me to a new set of skills. And it was the new set of skills that were relevant to the new money results that I was seeking. Because, for the first 40 years, I was just using my faithful old skills. And of course, it was those faithful old skills that were actually denying me access to the money that I was wanting. And then I had to start thinking about my thinking itself. Where was my thinking? Was my thinking in profit thinking, or was my thinking still in this business about the exchange of labor and time for money? So I had to change my thinking from this, this labor and time for money model of the world into a much more enterprising model that really understood value itself and how value is exchanged within our society. Because it was really important for me to understand that I was making choices from every one of those levels and every one of those layers. In fact, all of those choices from all of those money drivers were having a compound effect on each other because they all influenced each other. And so the way that I started thinking was to say, look, if I can get a small percentage increase, a small percentage improvement in each of those money drivers, then I could actually have a very large compounding effect. And in this case, literally 256% compounding effect on my money results. And that was the first part of my journey that allowed me to successfully navigate my way to my first $1 million. So that's all for me for this video. So stay tuned for video 2 where we start looking at seeing opportunities. So until then, it's bye for me.